Guys, today I'm going to talk about a very great concept in the programming model. You know, I personally feel without having a knowledge of this design pattern, it's very hard for you to think in a right way when you're going to design a new softwares. And honestly, it's not something biased to any language like this particular singleton design pattern. Hey, this is only for Java, this is only for Python or some other languages. No, it's not exactly for any object-oriented programming language. This is a de facto pattern. You definitely need to understand, and you will understand like in a power of after knowing this technology, this particular concept. This is a great value addition when you actually write your softwares. And believe me, this is one of the very favorite question asked by the interviewer also, because like I also said, my lot of discussions on the technical stuff is about to prepare you for the interview also, because I also take the interviews, and when I actually look for the right concept and the business use case, people normally get confused about, yeah, I know this concept, but how to use it. So that's the motivation. Get the idea about how to implement the stuff what you are exactly learning. Okay, cool. So without having adding much of your time here, let's get dive into what is singleton design pattern. So singleton design pattern, think in a way like you are developing a software and you want to create just one instance of that class. Now you can ask me what are those conditions. Now, let me tell you those conditions. Let's say you are going to make a database connections. You definitely want, if there are 10 different objects that create your database connections, then you want all those objects should get just same instance every time, because you don't want to open those many number of connections and hit your bottleneck of your number of connection at the server. It's not just database connection, it's the plenty of different exercises. Let's say there are some static global values that does not change throughout your object lifecycle. Let's say something on a static resources, the fixed values, the configurations values, which never changes. So those are as a part of your singleton object that need not to be called every time, and it should be initialized just once, held in the memory, and should be shared across always. Whenever it's any object demand, it can just give the value. Hey, this is the value. I do not need to calculate it again from database, because you can think otherwise. Let's say there are configurations value that does not change. If you store in the database, object A demands, you give, okay, you hit the database, you give it back to object A. Object B demands, you again hit to the database, you give it to object B. But actually, what happened? You gave the same stuff throughout your call of A and B. That doesn't change. So, singleton object, the only motivation that you need to keep in mind, where you think the values are not changing, or you need to optimize the connections. And there are a lot many cases you will find throughout your course of your software career. Now, when I actually look for this singular design pattern, like I said, it's not biased to any design pattern, any different languages. Let me give you an example. Let's say if you want to write this in a Python, I have written this design pattern, which is singleton. So I call it, the name is singleton. And also, I should add here, this is something not for Python beginners. If you are a Python beginners, maybe you should look my other training where we have explained a lot of details about the Python training. But please watch this training once you have a basic Python understanding, very much clear with the concepts. You should know the controller statement, the flow, the basic language pillar. Then only dive into this particular singleton concept. Here you go. So keeping this as a foundation, this is my singleton class. And when I say this is singleton class, and you see here, to get the object for the singleton class, you need to define a static method like I defined it here. So what this static method does, it gives the instance of the singleton object when it is being requested by a class outside of the singleton. So let's say class B and class A want to get this instance of singleton, it will call the get instance method. And that's why, I have tagged it with the static method. Now, the catch point here is when you define a singleton class, you should never give a way in which a singleton class needs to be initialized by the constructor invocation. So that's why when because a normal Python developer, they put a class and just bracket around it and just to say, hey, not around it, I mean the end of the bracket. So I'll show you that in my when I run this program. So they have no normal tendency to do that, and this is how I mean they get confused. So that's why this constructor need to be banned to create new instances. Just should give you the instance which is already initialized at the class level here. So now a question comes: if you decided, oh yeah, this is singleton class I created, how to test this out? That's why you see here this unit test package in Python. You can do a lot of testing. I know if software developer who are good into development, they need to do a good writing of unit testing. So my intention is to give you the unit test also so that you can write your logic and you test, yeah, exactly, I'm writing the stuff that I wanted to. So now you see here, this singleton test is a new class, which is unit test. Now, what I'm doing is for the unit test, we have a setup method where we define like what all things we need and other stuff. But I'm not going to add the unit testing of Python, but like I said, it's for Python, not for Python beginners. So this is like singleton class, that instance, which is being called for S1 and then S2, and then printing S1 and S2. What does this actually mean? I wanted to show you right after this execution of the program. Here the program has been executed, and let me show you what actually happened. So this is how actually it's happening here. So this program is saying this object is created with this memory address. Look at here. So this memory address, which is created, you see all this memory address is same, and these are hexadecimal representation of the memory address. So that means the object that you have created, which is one for the first singleton instance, which is S1 and S2, are exactly the same. So that's what exactly I mean when the singleton is referring the same memory instance. Although you see there is a two different line of invocation where I'm going to create an object. So print S1 and S2. So both are actually referring the same object. So that's what my mean is about singleton. Guys, I think you definitely like this video because, for your interview, and forget about the interview, just not just to have a job cracking, but go for the main core concept. Even a Java programmer says, like, what is singleton? The design pattern question, whenever I ask to for a candidate in the interview, normally I get like 4 5 years people, 6 years people, like they say, hey, I don't know design pattern. I'm in Python, I'm in diff, other languages, but that's not true. You should be having a very good computer science knowledge, and design pattern is a core foundation. So that's the series I have started, and please do watch and subscribe my channel. I'm going to add let a lot of design patterns. I'm going to talk about the complete gang of four we call in design patterns, where I will explain where exactly this singleton design pattern falls. And believe me, I cannot imagine without this design any software exists in the world. Yes, I can bet on this. Definitely, it is there. Now, there can be an interview people who can tell you, hey, this is not exactly singleton. Like two thread can get instance method, and they'll create a two new singleton object here, like here this. So you can just explain in this way, like, hey, that's definitely true, but that's an edge scenario. If that happens, we can definitely impose a threading dot lock here. But I don't want to add that overburden of threading dot lock here is not needed. But yes, if there are billions of requests, millions of requests per second, yeah, that would be definitely needed. Cool, man. With this, I'm going to end my discussion. Really appreciate you watching this video. Cool. Be with me for upcoming videos. Thank you. Bye bye.